We're gonna start off with where you were born and raised, and then it's not an interview. It's we'll both just kind of meander through your how old are you?
I am 58.
We're gonna meander through your 58 years if you don't mind me picking away at it.
Well, I just had a 40-year re high school reunion, I just did that on Saturday, it's crazy when you go back like that,
How was
to
it?
childhood kind of people I went to kindergarten through high school with. So it's pretty crazy to be 58 now. So.
How did you feel you fared compared to everyone else? Like it's natural to kind of do a little bit of comparison.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the people I grew up with seem like, I mean, you can recognize them right away, like, which is cool, always cool. There's some people you're like, I have no idea who you are, but no, it was fun. I felt like compare okay compared to most people, I guess. I mean, when you're outside all the time, you know how a guiding's like. I mean, it's a lot of physical activity, and I think you fare better, at least. I don't know. I just feel like I do better than most, just being outside and doing your thing, so
Yeah,
not stuck in an
you look
office.
fit. You look like you're very fit. Is that safe to assume?
Yeah, yeah, I row a boat for a living.
Yeah.
I don't row a jet boat, I row a drift boat for a living. So,
Was
you
any
gotta be fit to do that.
Was anyone surprised that you ended up being a fishing guide, or did they all know that you fished in school?
No, I mean, I did it when I was in high school. So, I mean, they all asked me, are you still doing that? Is what they asked me. I'm like,
You're
yeah,
like,
what
look at
else
my
am I gonna
sunglass
do?
line. What do you think?
Right. Exactly.
Of course you are.
Yeah. But most of them have no idea what that means. They just think I go fishing all the time. So,
Yep, that's fair. I know that assumption. Well, let's start from the very beginning. So where were you born and raised?
I grew up up on Mount Hood in Welch's. You actually know where, kind of Mark's Fly Shop around that area is where I grew up.
In
So I think that's
Oregon.
where we first met once when you're doing a clinic at Mark's Fly Shop, which is the fly fishing shop in Welch's, Oregon.
Is it still
So
there?
no, Mark finally retired.
Oh, well, he deserved. That's good. He deserved some
Well, yeah, I
time off.
mean, exactly. Yeah. So he finally retired and the shop changed. He sold the building and now I think it's a bike shop or some kind of outdoor store now.
Oh, it's
But
not even a fly shop anymore?
no, no, it's not a fly shop
Oh,
anymore.
I don't know how I feel
Uh,
about that, actually. That's disappointing.
yeah, and there's some others around that are closer to, Portland, I guess, that probably do a little better than maybe up on Mount Hood. But
Hmm.
no, that's where I grew up. And so I grew up fishing tributaries of the Sandy River.
Okay, got it.
So, there's the Salmon Rivers, Zigzag. These are all little steelhead rivers that flow into the Sandy. So,
Did you start with steelhead? Do you know how it all started?
yeah, I mean, trout fishing, I mean, there's West Slope cutthroat. So they're little. And so, I mean, I fish for trout. This will sound funny, but you're out there fishing for trout, using worms or bait or whatever, and you hook steelhead, which is what happens. And I'm a kid, I don't have the tackle for that. I got some rod that's a eagle claw and, some cheapo thing that just I would destroy them. My mom would have to buy me new rods all the time because I would just wreck them from hooking steelhead. And so I'm like, all right, why am I fishing for like something this big when I can catch something bigger?
It's
So,
true. What about the season? Did you end up um, kind of figuring out the salmon fishery as well, or were you out there in the
nah, I
winter?
wasn't much into salmon fishing, just steelhead. Most of those rivers, they're high enough up that by the time the salmon get up there, they're really not worth fishing for.
Oh, is that why?
It's all the spawning, they're up way up in the spawning grounds by then. So they're just kind of annoying. They're swimming zombies is what I would call them.
Right. And how old were you during all of this? You said your mom, so I'm assuming you were quite young
Oh
still.
yeah, no, I mean, I started fishing. I mean, I don't know. Probably my mom would let me go at 6, 7, 8 years old. I lived right by one of the rivers, so I just go down to the river. I mean, I wouldn't let my kids do that. Nowadays, they're older now, but I mean, it was pretty cool that my parents let me go do that, and go down to the river. And it didn't mean I was fishing all the time. I just hung out. I loved being on the water. I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
realized at a young age, right?
Do you know
So,
what it was about? What was it, the water, the fish? And before you even go there, So your parents were together. Did you have siblings? Did they go
Yeah, I
weekly?
have a sister. Yeah, I have a sister. But nobody really fished in my family.
Right.
Just something I did. Um, but yeah, no, I just lived on I mean, it was just a couple hundred yards down the trail and I could be on a river. But like that'd be snorkeling, inner tubing like any kid that lived, up in the mountains kind of. You just like I just lived on the river and then in the winter I'd be up skiing. But no, fishing was just my thing, I guess.
And then what about through school? Were you that kid who snuck out as soon as you got out of school?
Well, I mean, I fished a lot in the summer. I don't know. I did sneak out of school probably and fished a few times, but I was more likely to sneak out and go up to the mountain and go skiing, is
Ah,
what I would
okay.
do. So, um, yeah, because we had a pretty good ski team racing and stuff because we all lived up on Hood, so we wouldn't be in school very much at times. We'd be up on the mountain training or skiing. So, um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and
no, growing up on Hood was a cool experience to have both of those, water and then snow um but then I started tying flies at actually a
Mhm.
really young age. An older gentleman gave my dad some fly tying stuff, which was I tell people it's like mothballs and like, it's not that great a fly, and it's a bunch of junk basically. But when you're 13, 14 years old, you're just like, all right, this is cool. And you had like the books that he gave me were more pen and ink, just drawings of flies. There wasn't any color plates or anything like that, really. Um, until Trey Combs came out with a book that I have that was his first book. That was the only color plates I really saw of like how to tie flies, I guess.
and that would have come a
This is
bit,
in the 70s,
yeah,
so
that would have come later because
yeah.
I podcasted Nick Lyons last week.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and he did Trey's book. So just to
Yeah.
get my timeline straight. So if you started fishing early, and obviously you're fishing with worms, you said, when
Oh
did
yeah,
you,
yeah.
and then if fly tying puts us at 13, 14, when did you start figuring out the fly fishing side of things? Do you remember how that pivot
Well, I
happened?
mean, so I started tying flies, but I didn't really fly fish. This will sound funny, is that I just drift fished flies, like I didn't own a fly rod and Mark's shop didn't open until 1981 or 82. So there really wasn't a fly shop around other than if I went into town, which would be it closer to Portland or something. So it sounds weird, but I'd drift fish with flies and I caught a lot of steelhead doing that with
I don't
like.
think it's weird at all. I mean, we were drifting jigs. What's the difference?
Right, exactly. I mean, this is before anybody was doing that. But I mean, you'd fish like a woolly bugger, a woolly worm, or like just something on a hook, and you just drift fish. And these are little rivers. Like they're not very big. They're like a couple hundred CFS. You can see the steelhead in the river.
Ah, that
You
changes
see them
things
in these
too.
staging pools all up and down the river. And a lot of these were those Skamania summer runs. They were mainly hatchery, but they planted a lot of those Skamania summer runs, is what I grew up fishing. And those are really a fun summer steelhead. They're an early run, but you can fish them all the way through the fall.
What is that, June? They start end of June?
Yeah, well, actually on the Sandy, they come in April.
Oh, so they come
On the
in.
lower Sandy, they come in April and then they move their way up.
Oh.
So like they'd show up in April, the peak of the first part of the run be maybe May, mid-May, and then there'd be another kind of push of fish, maybe June, early July, that would kind of get up towards Mount Hood. And then those would hang around through the fall. Now sometimes there'd be a lull because the rivers would get too low and too warm. But as soon as you got that rain again, like any steelhead river, get a freshet, and then boom, those fish would move again. And but you could fish all the way to December for those fish, basically.
So it sounds
But
very
that's what I
similar
grew
to
up with.
BC. It sounds like you've got steelhead 365 days a year if you're willing to put in the effort to find them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, no doubt. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you could do that around here easily.
How did you
So
figure it out back then? Because there was no internet. The guys were pretty guarded. Obviously, you had your topo maps. You could look at the gradient and try to figure it all out. But how did you personally figure out where these fish were?
I just went hiking.
Okay.
I was just like, bring it back to mom again. Mom's always helpful, but mom would give me a ride somewhere. I'm like, Mom, I'm in either riding my bike, and I have some funny stories about riding my bikes places, but you just would ride your bike. Like, I need to go here. Like, this seems like this should be a good area. I didn't have a map or anything. It was just like, I hear this is good. I need to go there.
Where did you
So I
hear it?
would
Did you
hike
hear
a
it
lot.
through friends, the fly shop? Did you have a mentor? Did you have a buddy? I've got so many questions, Brian.
Well, at first, no, I was just out doing it on my, I'm just a kid out living on the river. Like, it's weird because I tell people, like, man, I just hung out on the river all the time. I'd eat salmon berries or, huckleberries, and I'd drink right out of the river or find a spring. I mean, I would just be gone for hours and it wouldn't see anybody. But really later on, once Mark opened that fly shop, then, that kind of put me in the right direction on fly fishing more. I had somebody to kind of show me what to do or even how to tie a fly correctly. I'm just wrapping stuff on a hook and going fishing. So no, that changed everything once that shop opened and I started hanging out there and I tied commercially for Mark, how kind of how it started.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we're going to talk about that because I've got some questions there as well. I've got questions about everything. But all right, what about the winter steelhead lure? Once upon a time, they thought that you couldn't even catch winter steelhead on flies. Were you at the
yeah, we
latter
can.
the latter side of that, or did you go through all of that?
Well, so for me, like guiding, here's a good example. Guiding was only a summer thing, maybe into the fall. We didn't guide in the winter much.
Oh,
Well, like
okay.
in the mid and early 80s, like nobody guided winter steelhead with a fly, that I knew of.
Mhm.
Because all we had in those days, you had your single-handed rod and a teeny line, right?
Yes, yep.
Jim Teeny had those 24-foot sink tips, which were pretty cool at the time. You could
Yeah.
palm those things. But just think of swinging that for winter steelhead, you just lose every fly you own. I always thought. And it just wasn't fun. I mean, to me, it's supposed to be fun. And I didn't enjoy the winter thing that much until spey rods, two-handed fly rods showed up. So
But that came
that's
in
where that all
decades
changed.
later. That came in way later. I know you were early in that, but it's still,
Right. So we did it in the early, like late 80s, early 90s,
oh,
but it wasn't
that's
until
soon.
like the mid 90s is
I was
where
gonna
we
say
really,
mid 90s, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Late
that's
80s?
really,
Sorry, now I'm getting
well, I
excited.
mean,
Okay, but how did that
yeah.
happen? I mean, I don't want to go too far ahead. No, no, I'll keep my brain organized here. That's what we do here. All right, we're gonna
But
do
yeah,
this
winter
sequentially.
steelhead wasn't a thing we did until about the mid 90s is what I would say.
Okay. And then so you start going to the shop, you meet Mark,
Yep. Well, actually, I
and
knew Mark since I was in the fourth grade. I went to school with his kids, so
oh,
I've known him
okay.
for a long time, way before that. Playing Little League baseball with his boys, and so we grew up together, his sons. So
Yeah, I
that's how
guess
I
because
knew
they're
Mark
about the
and
same age,
Patty.
right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, so then guiding. I mean, what was the first step there? Because you started guiding in what, 81 or 82?
It wasn't until about 85.
Okay, how did that all happen?
So as we're in there tying flies, as a commercial fly tire, we hung out in Mark's shop and there's that round table. I don't know if you ever remember that. There was a weird little table in his shop there, and that's where like me and his sons kind of hung out and sit and cranked flies out in their old shop. They moved a couple times.
Okay.
But so we sat in there tying flies all the time, and the owner, Mark Bachman, and they had another owner, Mark Stensland, and then there was Patty, and then there were some others. But they got so busy guiding on the Deschutes, they couldn't really take the local stuff anymore, like doing these local trips, which would be around Mount Hood for those Skamania summer runs. So they kind of helped us, like they told us, like, hey, you guys maybe should do this. And mainly it was Troy Bachman who started it first, kind of because that's
Oh,
Mark's son.
yeah.
And then I started guiding, about that same time too. And these are walk and wade trips though. So
Of
we just
course.
took
Yeah.
just wade fishing. So we did these 4 hour, you know, basically steelhead trips. So you did morning or evening, basically. And it sounds funny, but it was $20 an hour, 4 hour minimum, and that's what you did, and that's what the trip was. It was $80.
$20. Okay, so when I started guiding, 2007, I was paid 25 bucks an hour. That's
Yeah.
horrible. Oh my God, Canadian,
Correct.
which is actually less than $20 an hour American. Oh wow, I can't believe I did what I did.
Right.
Um,
So we did those walk and wade trips, which is a great way to start,
of
kind of
course,
just to
yeah.
do these like, and most of them are these 4 hour trips. And most of the time people hired you because you're like just out of high school or a high school kid, and you it's just a great way to start. Most people just hired you to kind of just show them the river or kind of show them some areas. and so it was kind of a good way to cut your teeth kind of on something like that. But it was really fun because we would sight cast for steelhead is what we did. So,
Yeah.
you take clients and you're like, yeah, we're going to go up to this spot where I know there's like 10. And they're like, okay, whatever, kid, and you're like, see, look, there's 10 right here. And they're like, oh, this kid does know where these fish are. So
Did you
that
ever
was
dabble in
fun.
dry flies when you could see them? Did you think we should give it a try? See if they'll come up?
Uh, yeah, there was times you could. There's different, I don't know, there's different genetics on steelhead, and I think some of them don't really rise very well. Those Skamania runs and those mountain streams don't really, I mean, you could get them, but you're more likely to do something, better if you swung a little deeper to them. And you got to remember, this is all public waterways where these things got clobbered at times. So they weren't like, pristine, in the sense of where there
Untouched.
were people fishing on them all the time. So but there was moments they would come up. I mean, if October caddis were coming or, when those showed up, you could get them on a skater. So,
Do you think they eat? What are your personal thoughts on that?
uh, well, I tell people this is that, I rate steelhead in two different categories. Summer run, the longer they're in freshwater, the more trout-like they get, the more they'll feed. They have that instinct. There's food around. Winter steelhead, different animal. There's not many bugs. I mean, colder water, more predatory. So to me, they're just those two separate steelhead entities, I guess, if you want to call it that. But summer steelhead, I think I've caught them on trout. I mean, trout gear a lot. We've done it this year. I mean, most of the steelhead I've caught lately is fishing a hopper dropper and guy hooks up. And you're like, oh, that's a good one. You're like, oh, that's a steelhead.
Yeah.
Then it breaks you off. But,
Do you
but
get the
the
same?
caddis pupa, like a size 16 caddis pupa, you can't tell me they're not eating it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly right. I wonder how much of that is instinct. In BC, obviously, we've got our winter run fish, probably like you, are closer to the ocean. So
yeah,
they're just not there very long. They don't get those habits. Whereas inland, the farther up they go, obviously, the more trouty they get. In
right.
your region, how far from the ocean can they travel? Do you know off the top of your head?
Well, I mean, the farthest river that we would have that like for steelhead to be like the Grand Ronde,
Yeah. Oh, that's
that
way up there. Yeah.
way up there, right? They got to go up the Snake and then go in the Ronde, and that's way up there, and those they get up in there. The Deschutes would be the fishery I fish the most in the summer and fall, and I mean they got to get past two dams to get into the Deschutes in the Columbia, and then they go up the 100 miles of the Deschutes, the from the dam down. That's 100 miles, and so they travel up the 100 miles right there. So. I mean, they're not doing some of what maybe in BC, some of those small rivers, but pretty close, though, I would guess.
Yeah,
Where
pretty
like
close.
I think winter steel is the same. They're not in the freshwater very long. I
No.
mean, some of those spring fish are there a week or two, maybe at best.
Yeah.
So,
We've caught them to do samples, scale samples, as they're turning around to go back, and they still have fresh scales. I mean, they literally go
oh
in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they go
You
straight
can
out.
get downriver fish or a kelp that's super bright. Like you can
Right?
hardly tell.
Yeah, exactly. Then it's just on that note, when they do go up that far on the Deschutes, how long is juveniles when they hatch? How long will juveniles stay in there?
Well, I think on average they would tell you 2 years of juvenile fish, but you might have some 3-year-old fish too that are like on some rivers, there's a lot of 3-year-olds, smolts just because they need to be bigger to get out of where they're coming from and down. Another example would be the John Day River.
Yeah, right.
Um, they go way up in the John Day, clear up in the North Fork. I mean, way, way up there. And some of those juveniles I've seen are like they're like 14 inches. I mean, that's a big smolt. But they got
Yeah.
to get through the bass
I
and
was gonna
everything
say
else. So
it's an obstacle
but
course.
I've been with Marty Shepard and we've seen those, and you're like, God, these smolts are huge. And it's like, well, they got to get through all these bass to get out of here. So I think they're adaptable. I mean, they'll figure out a way to survive. And so I think on average, most smolts are 2-year-old smolts, The
Yeah.
2-2 is kind of our average fish, 2 years in freshwater, 2 years in saltwater.
Okay, that
So
would explain the size too. Were those
yeah,
bass always there, or were they introduced once upon a time?
they were introduced.
Oh, that's disappointing. I didn't. I
Yeah,
figured.
it kind of is. I mean, it is. It's made a great fishery for some people,
Anglers, yeah.
You just think of what kind of steelhead fishery it probably could have been if they didn't do that. But I also think they irrigate the crap out of that thing too. I don't know how a steelhead would even, the way it works now, the bass are kind of gone when we're out there steelhead fishing because I helped Marty Shepard on trips there and Mia and there's no bass around anywhere, when they're in November. So they just go away when the steelhead are around, it seems like. But yeah, I always wonder about the smolts, how they get out of there. I mean, it's got to be just a gauntlet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's one region I don't know that much about. But let's go back to your fly tying. So you're doing commercial tying for Mark. I'm assuming you had been doing your own fly tying and he said, "Hey kid, let me put you to work."
Yeah, it was one of those things where you kind of went in and showed your stuff. You're like, "Hey, I tie flies," and then he's like, "Well, that looks, well, I'll show you how to tie those." And so, but it was good. I mean, like I have stories where I had to shave all the hooks off where I didn't tie them right, and Mark made me go back and retie them. But actually, I appreciate that because he was like, "Hey, these aren't right. These need to be tied this way, or I'm not buying them." Like, okay, then I better redo those. And so like it made me a better fly tire, but yeah, I mean, I would take orders, and this sounds crazy, but you would take orders like hundreds of dozens of stuff,
Mm.
like I would get an order of like size 4 Brookstone, 250 dozen. And
Oh,
you're
so
like,
you were
oh
doing trout fly.
boy.
You were, yeah, what I was going to ask,
I
what
tied
was the
trout
big
flies, steelhead flies, I tied anything.
Oh, sorry. I just the idea of I'm getting flashbacks even when I would get an order of, 100 or 200.
Yeah,
And it made me hate fly tying at the time. And then I quit and I enjoy it now. But how did
right.
you survive that mentally? Or were you just a young kid with your mates
Well, when
and
you're a kid, you could make $100 a day, right? Because if you tied 10 dozen a day and you didn't buy a lot of materials, you can almost make $100 a day. So you're, in high school or, you're 16, 17, whatever, and you're sitting tying flies at a fly shop where everybody else is doing something else. You're like, man, this is pretty cool. And I would never take any money a lot of times. I would just be like, ooh, I need this equipment. I need that. You know, you just had an account, so they give you a discount on stuff too. So I mean, you just built your fly fishing gear out of tying flies. That's how I built a lot of my, at least tackle that I had that was decent tackles. So.
yeah. And along the way, are you making connections and relationships? At some point, are you thinking, I am working in the fly fishing industry?
Well, I mean, at first you didn't even think of it as an
Well,
industry, really. I mean,
it wasn't then. But in your head,
right, it
were you
really
like,
wasn't.
this is my life? I work in fishing. Like if you're dating a girl, you're 18 years old, she says,
Right.
"So what do you do? Do you say I work in fishing?"
Right. Well, I mean, I would say that was a summer job, right? Like,
Okay.
because when, if you're talking 85, 86 is when we're talking about, I was 18 and 85, it was just a summer thing. So I was still going to college, in
Oh, you
the
did.
winter. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I went to college and I
Oh,
have a
that's right,
degree in
because you
fish
have your degree in
biology now,
exactly.
but
That's right. We're gonna get to
yeah.
that. There's so much to talk about. All right, keep going. So yes, you're 18.
But I mean, so it was a summer job. So they're like,
Yes.
yeah, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, in the summer, I'm guiding or trying to and tying flies. And so you would tie flies during the day and take trips either in the morning or evening, doing those walk and wade trips. So, I mean, you were making some money, but it wasn't like it was a career or anything. And
No.
I'm in my little world in Welch's, Oregon. I mean, I can't think of as like fly fishing as an industry. I'm just like I'm just doing my thing,
Yeah.
I guess. So
And
I think it's pretty cool. I got a summer job of doing that. So,
yeah, paying bills. The college side of things is very interesting to me. What was your end goal there? Did you assume that you were going to get a job in biology and therefore be on the rivers all the time? Did you want to be a fish
well, I
warden?
did, I did for a little while, but then I kind of didn't like it.
So,
So, so I went to school, got a degree in fish biology. I basically got an associate's degree and then didn't quite finish my bachelor degree. I just went to work. And so I could get, you basically experimental biologist aide, which is what they do with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And you're working at a research office. This is kind of what I wanted to do. So I did a lot of salmon trout enhancement programs is what they used to do. We did in
Right.
Oregon. So they did like you'd put in like log jams and habitat and like fun stuff like that. I love that. But you do like creel census or broodstock collection. I mean, I did electroshocking. I did water right evaluations. I mean, I did all sorts of stuff out of this. I was on the Rogue Rivers where I was,
Oh,
and I did
wow.
that for a year. Well, I picked a place where I've never really been, or really hung out. And I was like, man, I would love to be in the Rogue River Valley. That's kind of a cool area. And so I learned for that year I was there, I kind of did that for a year. And that was in 1988 when I worked for the Fish and Wildlife. And then that was just a seasonal job. And the same thing, you had to work all these seasonals to finally maybe get a permanent job. And I mean, the pay was terrible, really. And I don't know, there was a lot of politics with it that I didn't care for.
There
A lot
are
of
a lot
people
of
were
politics
upset
with
about the
it.
fisheries and they're taking it out on me. And I'm like, you're talking to the wrong guy. I'm just a kid doing stream surveys. And like, I'm asking if you caught any fish and can I see them?
Yeah.
Because we did scale samples and stuff. And they're like, oh, there's no fish in here. And you're like, hey, man, I'm just trying to do my thing.
Were
So
you
after I
like,
left that, that's when I started guiding full time, would be 1989. That's when I was like, all
oh,
right,
okay.
this is it. I'm gonna try this, make this more of a career if I can do it. And so
Was
that
it
was in 1989. And
just simply because it made you happier? The money was
yeah,
better and
yeah,
own terms.
exactly. I was just like, all right, if I'm gonna do this, let's see if I can really do. And I'm still trying. That's how I always tell people.
I feel like you've done a really good job. As far as the fish go back then, could you retain wild fish? Can you still retain wild
Um,
fish?
well, when I first started, you could, not guiding, but when I first started fishing as a kid, you could because they didn't fin clip hatchery fish.
They didn't what? Oh, they didn't fin clip them?
Yeah, they
But they
didn't
had
fin clip hatchery fish in like the 70s,
but they had
late
the hatchery
70s.
fish?
Well, they had hatchery fish. Yeah, yeah, it was more in the, but I guess it'd been like mid 80s when they but they've had hatchery fish since the 50s and 60s
Yeah.
in some areas. So, I mean, they didn't fin clip them. So
Interesting.
most of the fish you didn't know. I mean, other than the dorsal fin, you could tell it was maybe a hatchery fish, but you could keep anything in those days. And I mean, as a kid, you did. I mean, like,
Of course you did.
right? I mean, how are you supposed to show that what you caught? You didn't know any different.
Okay, so you go into it full time now. At this point, are you married? Do you have any dependents?
I, me and my wife started dating right out of high school. So we were engaged probably then. And we didn't get married till 92. But so my wife's been with me through kind of the whole things, which actually helps, I think, with because a lot of guys are divorced and like or can't keep relationships because they're gone all the time. And I see it and they're always asking me, and I'm like, well, my wife understands it's a business. Like, this is my job. It's not just going fishing and, messing or like screwing off all the time or something. Like, I'm working.
Yep.
And so no, she helps out a lot. I mean, she's my bookkeeper and keeps me organized on a lot of things. I mean, I don't rely on her as much as maybe I did at one time, but on some things, but no, I mean, so we were dating basically, at that time. But didn't have any kids yet, so
And
um
that lets you get your footing too with less pressure, right? It's like we're going to throw it all at the wall and see what sticks.
right, and I talked to her about it. She was like, "Yeah, you should do it. I mean, if this is what you want to do, like you should try this, And so that's why I went all the way in and I mean, I'm kind of happy I did it, I guess.
Yeah, good for her. That's really that is the big difference between a lot of people who are I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into successful marriage. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now,
Right,
but
no,
I
no.
love to hear that it's worked and that it's working. So, okay, so you decide that you're going to go in all the way,
Yeah.
and it's now let's just bring us to the late 80s. At this point, what are you noticing is happening out there? Are there a lot of guides? Are the fish returns dwindling? What are you seeing out there?
Well, in that particular time, this is still before two-handed fly rods,
Yes,
so
yes.
we
I'm
were
very
still
deliberately
doing.
stopping there and because I'm
Right,
excited
yeah.
to go to
And
that next
so
chapter.
we're before spay or two-handed fly rods. And so it's still a seasonal thing. I mean, like really I can guide maybe April to October, kind of. It wasn't a full-time gig. And I don't know anybody that, other than they worked in a fly shop or owned a fly shop, that really did a full-time guiding like all year long. There was no such thing that I knew of in that particular time frame of late 80s, early 90s. Um, I mean, I worked, you went and got a job. Like I worked in a ski area or did something, during the winter, which would be basically December to March or something like that if you could. And then hopefully they'd give you a little leeway if you got a trip or here or there, maybe picked up a guide trip. And that's kind of the job you were looking for, where you could bail and like, oh, I got a trip, I need to go. And they're like, yeah, go ahead. So those were usually the places you did. But so it wasn't until the two-handed fly rod became popular, where it became more of a full-time gig, which, like I said, had to be in mid to late 90s probably, is where more and more people got involved. I mean, I started spay casting like 89 or 90, but I didn't even know what I was doing. And the rods were 15-foot 10 weights, who wants to use that thing?
They're miserable. And the lines weren't very helpful either. So
No, the
what
lines were terrible.
how when I think of the two-hand side of things, I always think about ease of use, covering more water, I guess in some ways bringing in more people. I never have thought about it economically. So how did that then align with your busy season? How did you end up getting working more when the two hands came out?
Well, at first it was probably just doing kind of almost casting lessons because it was really getting popular. And Mark's shop was really big on spay casting, the fly fishing shop there at Welch's. So he was real adamant, kind of getting going on that too, and saw, I mean, to some degree, saw that how that was going to probably change things and really pushed it. So it was kind of helpful to be part of that shop and kind of spay and get in and on it early. And it was a lot of, like I said, at the beginning, it was probably just teaching people. They were like, "Hey, I'd like to hire this winter. Yeah, I don't really care if we catch anything because winter's terrible. I just want to learn how to spay cast, I'm saving everything for my summer steelhead. I just want to learn during the winter." And so that was where a lot of it started, was just teaching people, floating the river and kind of maybe fishing, but it was more of a class really of just how to spay cast. So um, that's where it really started.
And how are they learning about it? Obviously, Mark's shop would have been part of this, but this is before the internet. It's not like there were internet forums.
Well, I mean, there was still some. I mean, there wasn't much internet on that particular time, but I mean, people hear about it. I mean, two-handed fly rods have been around, like for a really long period of time. Just people would see you out there with them, and like especially if
Ah,
you're out there fishing, they're like, "What is that thing?" And you'd have guys that are gear fishing, are like, "What are you gonna do with that long rod?" And you're like, "Well, I'm gonna go out here and catch a steelhead." At least try. So it's just inquisitive people, I guess, because people are always that way, and they're like, "What is that?" And then they see you throw a cast, even if it wasn't a great cast. You're like, "Wow, he got it out there pretty easily." Like, I need to check that out. And people hear about it, and you got magazines that are writing about it, in those times, right?
yep.
So, and then you have Trey Combs talking about it, and in some instances, and magazines and other things too. So, but I mean, that's kind of why I think where it started was just some of that school stuff, I guess you can call it, where people really wanted to learn just because they were like, I keep hearing about this. What is this spay rod?
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like, well, it's a two-handed fly rod first, and that's a spay cast.
Where were you getting your instruction from? Do you remember how you learned to do it besides
I
just
just did it
flogging,
myself.
flogging?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just beating the water to death, basically. I mean, I was a pretty good single hand caster. If you're steelheading and out there all the time, I would practice every day behind the fly shop and cast, like I'm left-handed and I'd cast left hand and as far as I could throw, and I'd practice 90 feet is what always my practice would be, kind of. And then I would switch right hand and try to hit 90 feet.
Smart.
I'm never as good right-handed, but I love casting because that's what really I like about fly fishing is like I like the art of it, the casting, like the whole thing. And like spay casting at first, Well, I'll tell you how I came to Oregon kind of for us is there was a friend of ours, me and Marty Shepard, this guy that we worked for up at Timberline Lodge when we worked at the rental shop. So Marty Shepard worked for me kind of. I was his boss up at the ski shop kind of. And Marty was into snowboarding in those
Of course,
days, right?
yes.
And so there was a friend of ours, a guy named Steve Cruz, who was a great guy, and he just got back from Alaska guiding at Katmai Lodge, and he was guiding with Ed Ward, Deck Hogan, Scott Howe, all these guys that were from the Washington side, and that kind of connected us with them. And that's kind of how the whole Spey in my world came about was Steve had the original 9140, which most people think this is the weird one. This is the Jimmy Green version where the top handle's this long and the lower handle's like that long. So the reel's like way up at the top. That was the first Sage I ever saw, other than, some big rod that, from Europe or somewhere. But that's so we were dinking around with that thing when he got back from Alaska. And then Ed and Deck came down to fish kind of with us on the Sandy or the Deschutes before they headed to the Grand Ronde.
Oh, this is
So
so cool putting all the puzzle
right,
pieces
that's
together.
how all the dots connect. I mean, it's still from Washington to some degree, but then we did our own thing, like those guys were doing. I was trying to learn from Ed or Deck, and then, we kind of just went our own way too. And you just you'd always get together again. You're like, ah, check this out, and they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, what do you guys? Oh, this is cool, and so, but that's where the dots connect on the spay casting. And it really came from this guy, Steve Cruz, and hung out with Ed and Deck up at Katmai Lodge. He brought the spay rod down. We had some spay rods around or some two-handed fly rods around, but they were all these huge. I mean, Mark Bachman built a two-handed fly rod that was like a 16-foot, 10-11 weight. That was like a J. Kennedy Fisher. We had at the shop forever, and we had always wiggle that thing around, and you're like, God, who wants to fish with that? I mean, I'm not going to the Deschutes to catch a 5, 6 pound summer steelhead. I'd
Not on
rather fish
that thing. No
fixed
way.
weight,
You wiggle it, it
right? I
takes
mean,
like 5 seconds for the reverb to get back to you.
exactly. I was like, ugh. So I mean, and so that's how that started. It really wasn't until Sage came out with some other rods that really got us more interested in the spey casting, mainly the 9140, then a 7136, and then really for the Deschutes, it was a 6126 they came out with a few years later, became like that's when things just went crazy after that. So
Yeah. Okay. So what about lines? Were you ever privy to the shooting heads when those guys were playing around with cutting things back?
yeah, I was the worst at that. Like I will admit that I was terrible at making lines. So I would get whatever Ed would make me or somebody had made me because I tried to do it was just a waste of money for me. Like I would always screw it up or you're trying to get the 12 weight with the 10 weight and the 9 weight, and get the taper right of these heads. And so we used a triangle taper is what I used. A Lee Wolf had a spay line. There was a 70-foot head. That's what I used the most in the beginning. And we try to cut that back here and there, but that was our main line that I used. And then Mark Bachman made a line he called a launcher. There was a weight
Oh,
forward 12 weight that was cut back. The like you didn't have to like add and subtract and try to mic out some line. You could just cut it back a certain distance and try to make a Skagit head out of it. He called it a launcher, and that was kind of the first, I guess, organ Skagit.
yeah. This is exciting. I've not heard of the launcher yet. So what was he cutting? Do you know what the main line was that he was using? Was he using an airflow, a Rio?
It was a Cortland. I think it
Uh-uh.
was a Cortland because that was before Rio, and Airflow wasn't around either. So it was a Cortland saltwater line, a weight forward 12, like a
Ah,
long belly weight forward 12 or something like that. Sky, kind of saltwater type line.
yeah,
So,
right. And then what were you guys using as shooting line then?
well, I mean, we just had it as an integrated line. It wasn't late, till later we actually made a shooting line out of it. So it was just
Oh,
an
of course, because it was a
integrated
salt
line we
line, so it
used.
already had the running line.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
okay.
wasn't like, I mean, we had lead core, or some kind of, sink tip that you cut up that wasn't great either. So I mean, you were just trying to get anything out there. I mean, it wasn't fun.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Tapered sink
know,
tips weren't a thing back then either.
no, it
Just
was
like
it
big
was really
spools of
hard.
T12 and yeah.
Right. I mean, you just had like lead core is the worst. You kink that stuff, it end up being like this, and you're trying to fish it and you can't straighten it out. So,
Okay, so all of this is going down. Everything's starting to get busier for you. Let's get into early 2000s. At this point, you are definitely set. This is what you're doing. You are working in fly fishing. You've
yeah.
got
And now it's more of
multiple.
an industry, I guess, too. Now, if you think about it, in the 2000s, we're already like this thing's rolling now.
Yep, at
So,
that, and then you were kind of grandfathered in at this point. So, I mean, I know, I don't not literally as far as being a Are you grandpa? No.
no,
No,
no.
but in the quote
No.
unquote industry, at this point, you're there. I mean, a lot of us we've heard your name, we've come up with your name, we've all heard about you. You're in the list of steelhead legends, whether you like it or not. And it's funny actually to hear that you're only 58 because in my head you're so much older, not in any, we've never spoke before. So I only mean that in the kindest way in that I was born
Yeah,
in
yeah,
eight
no,
in
it's fine. I mean,
I was
I'm the old guy now. I'm fine with it because all the guys I'm dealing with now are in their 30s, which are great,
yeah.
And we work well together because they kind of understand that I've been doing it longer and they always ask me for advice or what I would do and I help them out, and so I have no problem with that. I
But you're
mean,
still really young but remember, I was
right.
born in 83. So when I was coming up in the quote unquote fly fishing industry, you were already there. You were one of those guys, right? It was you, Kinney, there's obviously Ward, Howell, Hogan, all of those guys, but you were in that very elite bucket. So at some
Just
point,
luck.
well, to you, but to us, we're looking up, right? At
Right,
some
right.
point,
Sure.
did you have to have a seat and think to yourself, wow, okay, this is now an industry. I am in this quote unquote industry. I'm looked up to in this industry. What is my next move? Did you ever you look at the guys, a lot of these guys have made moves, whether it be that they've gone all out publicly or maybe they've taken a step back. Did you at some point think, I'm going to make a next step here? Or did you just continue flatline, just continue everything as it was? What's not broken doesn't need to
Pretty
be
much,
fixed.
yeah. I mean, I always tell people I just want to be a fishing guide. I want to spend my time on the water. With my clients, either new or guys that I've guided for 30 years, some of them or more. And I mean, my happy place is just guiding people on the water. I don't really need anything else than that. I mean, I love doing that. And I want to show people that, like, I mean, this is my 40th season, of guiding. Like, you can keep doing this and still not be the grumpy old guide, because some people get burnt out and I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it where it's like, man, you need to stop this because this is not good. I mean, I want to show people that like you can do this and make a living at it and still enjoy it. If I don't, well, I always tell people this too. Like they always ask me, how many more years am I going to keep doing this? And I'm like, well, there's three factors. And there's one of them that's going to get you eventually. And the three factors are if I can't make a living at it anymore, pay my bills or the way the fisheries are, it's always up in the air anymore, especially with steelhead runs. I physically can't do it anymore, and it's not fun anymore. And the one that gets you is you physically can't do it. I mean, it's a lot more physical than people think. Rowing a drift boat, loading coolers. I mean, we do camp trips and you're loading dry boxes and coolers and tents and all this stuff all the time. And you got guys helping you, but that's the one that gets you. You physically can't do it. And I'm going to keep doing it till I physically can't do it or can't make a living or it's not fun anymore. And people are always like, not fun anymore. I'm like, well, if you're going to do this job, it has to be fun, I think. I mean, if I'm not having fun, I'll go do something else.
Yeah, life's too
'Cause
short to be miserable at your job.
exactly, right. I mean, so I want to have fun out there every day, and that's what I want to make sure people are having fun. I mean, I always tell them, if you're having fun, I'm having fun. Like, if you want to sit here and stare at the birds or like look around at the canyon, awesome. Like, we don't have to fish, I'm not going to push you into this. Like, if you want to fish, let's fish, but it's whatever people want to do. I'm happy for whatever experience they want out of it. So,
That was the real premise or the real core of my question, as far as wondering if you ever pivoted. A lot of people, myself included, at some point have looked at their career and they're surrounded. I mean, you'd be crazy not to look at your surroundings to see if there is a next step for you to take. For me, I said I'd guide 10 years and then I wanted to have a family. I wanted to,
Right,
be able to kind of pivot so that I could have more time with my daughter.
right.
Um, and family in general, poor Charles, but my whole family. For some people, it is health. So you kind of answered my question. I didn't know if there was a point where you thought, okay, maybe I am not happy, or maybe I have an injury that's not going to work for me. Maybe I
Right.
should write a book. It sounds like you haven't had the need to necessarily make a crazy move.
I know I'm not a writer, so I'm never going to write a book. There will never be, it'll be more of this. This will be the only way people know me by as a podcast or a video or something, because I am not a writer. I've had people ask me to write an article or something about one of my flies, and man, I struggle. I mean, luckily my wife will help me with it because that is not me. I mean, I can talk all day, but writing it down into something is not going to happen. So
Fair enough.
I know that for a fact.
So it sounds like as long as
Uh,
you can walk, you're going to be on the river.
Pretty much, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean that's gonna be it. Yeah, I'm gonna go as long as I can. And like I said, though, until it's not fun anymore, if it becomes, like I said, I mean that's crucial for me. I mean, I want to go out, like I said, have a good time and enjoy the company of people and just do my thing. So,
What about stocks? Is that something that concerns you? Do you ever look at your future and think, are the fish going to be here for it?
well, yeah, that's always a concern. So even this year on the Deschutes, like any river, they do a prediction for the Columbia River, like they would the Skeena or any of those. And so this year's prediction was not good at all. They said maybe 70,000 over Bonneville Dam. I think we're already past that. I mean, the counts have been really good. I
Oh,
mean,
good.
um, it started out slow, and it usually does, but there's been like 3,000, 4,000 a day going over Bonneville, which I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm sure we're above the 10-year average right now, but there's always concerns about that. Yeah. And I never thought that. And, when you were young, when I was younger, steel, it just never seemed like they never ended. It's just like we had huge runs. But I saw that as that hatchery run I grew up fishing went from crazy numbers and just kind of collapsed to where they even closed it, really. So, um,
Oh, so you've been there.
luckily,
You've
I mean, I
seen
fish
you've seen
trout
it
too.
close.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So a lot of those upper watersheds that I used to fish for steelhead, they closed those for a while. They
Yeah.
quit. They quit that hatchery run, and there was no wild fish really to speak of. So they kind of shut them down for a while.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I fish trout too, though. So I love fishing trout. So that's I mean, I'm not just a one-sided kind of like a lot of guys are steelhead only. I'm like, man, that's pretty harsh. I like trout fishing for a while and then go back to steelheading. So
Yeah, they make you appreciate steelhead more as well, I think.
right, and I mean, it's just a whole nother game that I enjoy for a while, and then sometimes I might get bored with that and be like, all right, let's go steelheading. So, um, but yeah, no, I think you got to be adaptable to some degree on this kind of thing, and I've thought about other fisheries to do if steelheading. If that's a thing of the past. I hope it's not. I think they're resilient as hell if we kind of leave them alone to some degree, but we don't know what's going on in the ocean. That's always my concern.
Yeah,
Uh,
every biologist I've spoke to we end up back at the ocean.
yeah,
When
yeah.
it comes to your flies, what is how many patterns, just for people listening who don't know, how many patterns have you commercialized? And then let's talk about your most popular ones.
I have no idea how many I've I mean, I don't know. I think at one time there was like 70 that were tied maybe between trout and steelhead because I tie both. And I'm probably going to be known for one fly that I reinvented the egg-sucking leech, basically, and that's probably going to be the only fly I'll be remembered for, which is the Sylvanator, because it's got a great name that I didn't even name, but um, which is just a bunny leech with, an egg sucker type, bead on it. It's just an easy thing to tie as a guides fly, really. You don't care if you lose it on the bottom, and it's still one of my favorite flies, probably. For winter or summer fishing, you can tie it in different sizes and colors and it's just endless. So, um, I mean, I've done a lot of other flies and spade flies and hair wings that I really like, but basically the Sylvanator is the one that's going to be the one I probably don't want to be remembered for, but will be remembered for.
It's always the ones that catch the most fish. What are your thoughts on having a wing?
So on like a summer steelhead fly or a,
Ooh, is there a difference? I mean, look, I'd
well,
say for obviously for winter steelhead, there are characteristics that you need to just even get to where the fish are. Let's for fun talk summer steelhead.
sure. Um, so to me, a wing is basically like a rudder to some degree, like you think of a basic fly like a greenbud skunk. Everybody knows a greenbud skunk. And you could, I mean, that came from Atlantic salmon, there's, what is it? Green butt black bear or whatever, like there's always been a green butt fly with like a black head, or dub body and a hackle. The white wing, I think, is sometimes reflects more light, and as a guide on the Deschutes, we see a lot. Like the white wing is what I watch all the time. You can see that white wing, but I think it tracks better, won't spin. Because sometimes certain flies, I'm sure you've tied them where you're like, why is my leader all like twisted up? And you're like, God, I think that fly's spinning for whatever reason. Like, why is it spinning? So I think you got to think flies that will track right. I mean, I want the hook to sit a certain way, right? I mean, you don't want your hook being sideways.
Mhm.
Fish grabs it, it's away from them or something. So, with steelhead flies, I think you need to really think it through on how the fly is going to track is the best way to think of it. And I think I like a wing on most of my flies. Partly as a guide, when we're fishing the Deschutes, I like watching the fly if I can in places, and that's super fun to kind of see one come up and grab that, And the Deschutes is well known for fishing little wet flies
Mhm.
and floating line, swinging flies, traditional, which I think it's important to keep those traditions. And a lot of people don't maybe do that, these younger generation, just because they can only catch them on maybe sink tips. They've never tried a little wet fly. Like, how did you catch it on those little number 7 Alec Jacksons? Like, oh, they crush those. And they're like, I don't think they see that. I'm like, oh, they do. So, but yeah, no, I mean, winter steelhead flies, I think you got to think more of how they sink, or how they
Yeah.
sit in the water, need to be a big profile, but maybe not too hard to cast. I've tied some that were terrible to cast myself. And I used to show people I would tie a fly into like a fly shop and I'm like, this is how you test them. And I would throw it across the fly shop, and I'm like, if they go to the, long distance, like that thing will cast, if you throw a fly that has too much material, it's not going to go very far. So, there's some of those kind of things too.
Because you are able to do so much sight fishing, or at least watching, do you see a lot of fish mouth flies or spit flies out? What do you notice?
Well, like, the last few years hasn't been good, but like last year was a pretty good year on the Deschutes. And it was like kind of reminded me of the old days that we'd hear about, or even Deck Hogan wrote his book on how fish come and follow and all sorts of things from watching on the Deschutes a lot. And so it's really fun to have clients where they're out there swinging maybe a glassy spot and I'm up on the bank and I'm like, oh, he just had one follow. And they're like, what? And I'm like, he followed it, but he did not take it. Like, and they're like, I didn't feel anything. No, he was just tracking it. Sometimes they'll fall. I mean, I've seen them like the flies here and they're way back here just following it. Yeah. And you're like, and then they just disappear again. You're like, oh, we got to change flies. And I tell people that's why there's all those hair wing flies to try a steelhead coachman or something real like buggy looking, and come back. And that as a guide, that's super fun. I mean, that's my favorite part of summer steelhead and is coming back with something and actually getting them. So that's the best. I love that stuff.
Is it like with trout? I mean, and being in the Southern Hemisphere, we do a lot of fishing in New Zealand. So I know there's a lot of seeing the fish take the fly and nothing happens, right? Nothing, there's no movement. The angler never knows. But because we're sight fishing everything, we can see it. With
Right.
steelhead, do you think with a swung fly, it's the same as with a nymph? Can they take it and nobody know?
I doubt it. You have so much tension on your line. I've never seen that where like you might feel like the lightest pluck, like a leaf on there because guys will go, God, I had something like just pull on it. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Throw it back out there, And then, like a lot of people go, I think it was bottom. And like, you have a floating line and a little wet fly.
Yeah.
It's down this deep. Like it's not bottom.
No.
And I'm like, throw it back out there. And they're like, you see this line go, And then they'll like come back. I'm like, that's a fish. I could be a trout, but I doubt it. It's probably a steelhead. Let's put something else on. And like I said, they throw it back out, like same thing, don't change anything. Okay, it's coming in. And it might be somewhere else in the swing, and then finally it connects. And you're like, oh, see, that was a steelhead. I don't think it happens where they grab it, but I think that you get a lot of follows because we can only
Right.
look in certain places where we can get up high enough on the bank. And then some days I've seen five or six, seven fish follow a fly, not even bite it. And you're
Together?
like, "God, how many
Oh, oh, no.
is that happening
Oh
all
my
day
God.
long?"
I just had
Like,
this vision of like this whole school of steelhead following a
right.
fly. But no, no, I know what you mean. Separately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
separately,
yeah, yeah.
but like each spot you went during the day,
Yeah.
you're like you had to follow here, and then you're like, God, you didn't take it, and then you go somewhere else, and then you might be able to see. You're like, God, how many of the times is that happening? So I think way more than you want to know, probably.
Do you have a
Just not
rule?
interested, but just kind of curious, just kind of following, and then just not really taking it.
You non-committal. Do you have a rule of how many times you'll let a fish see a fly before you change it out?
Well, typically, if somebody had a grab or a boil or something, I'm like, get it right back out there as soon as you can. Like, after it's done swinging all the way in, let it hang down. I'm like, all right, let's get it back out there. Throw it back out. Get it looking the same. I want the same every time. And then, if we get nothing, then it's like, all right, I'm changing the fly right then. I mean, and sometimes we'll step upstream like 4 or 5 steps, kind of work them back. Because I think as the steelhead comes up, it's somewhere else now. It's not in the same place.
You don't think
Um,
it goes back to the where it was lying?
yes and no. I mean, I've seen it where they went right back to the same boulder, good holding water. But if they're in some flat that doesn't really have that same big structure, I think they just moved up and they're like, I'll just sit here. So, I mean, I've gone up 4 or 5 steps and then get them right away. You're like, oh, was that the same fish or is that a different one? I
So,
presume it's the same one.
but you believe in consistency as well. It's interesting because Marty Shepard has the same thoughts on consistency. And a lot of the times you'll see an angler get a bump, they'll stick with the same fly. They may even step 2 steps upstream, but then they might present it differently because they think the fish wants a different presentation. But it sounds like you don't feel that way. It should be the same
I mean,
presentation.
well, I mean, I've tried all sorts of things. I think the same, consistent, annoying, like whatever you want to call it, like people always ask me why does steelhead bite a fly, and I'm like, well, think of it as annoying them or something in their area. Like if you have a bee or a bug buzzing you, you just use your hand to swat it away, right? Like if something's buzzing around you, you're like, God, get away from me. Well, what is the steelhead going to do? It's going to bite at it, right? That's the way I try to explain it to people. And I think the more consistent you have that annoying kind of swing over and over and over, that that gets them going. But I mean, I've also changed the swing too on certain occasions. Like, all right, well, that didn't work. Let's go faster. Let's see if we throw a downstream in and rip that thing across and see if he likes that. So, and that'll work too. I mean, there's no right or wrong way. It's just trying to get the steelhead to bite the fly,
Yeah, it's
basically.
putting all the pieces together. Do you have an
Yeah.
aha moment? Is there something that you have taught or shared with your guests? Is there something that you have taught them where they have an aha moment?
Well, I'm sure you've had it where, if you got somebody new to steelheading and they're used to any other kind of fishing where you set the hook, as soon as you feel something, steelheading, that doesn't work. Like that goes round and round with steelheaders all the time because some people like to set the hook on them and I don't. I mean, I tell people like just let them take it and let them run until once your reel starts spinning and really going, it's just an easy lift up. The more you try to set the hook on these things, the worse it gets, I feel like. So that's where the aha moment comes from. When you have a client, maybe they're new to it, holding a loop or not holding a loop, going straight to the reel, whatever works for them. I don't really care as long as they don't set the hook. But having them where they pull it away from one, you're like, ooh, you gotta let them take that, just maybe a little longer, and maybe having another opportunity where they like let them take and they're like, oh, he's got it, and you're like, yep, now lift, and then they're like, oh, I got one. That's one of those moments. It's really fun guiding to go from like, oh, dang, I maybe did that too early to like, ah, I got
Yay!
him. Yeah, exactly. So that's those moments then, basically. So
Do you fish a drag-free reel so that you can let it run?
I like to. I like the old Hardies, you know. I like it where there's no drag on them. And I tell, well, I like them because then people won't put their hand on that thing because it sounds like it's going to tear your hand off.
Oh, you guide with that? You let, oh, I guess some people fish your gear, some people
Yeah, I
don't.
mean, I guide, but I mean, most people have their own stuff nowadays. I mean, but I mean, I have, I always have some click reels sitting around. So,
Yeah, literally right next to you.
exactly.
What are your thoughts on, I'm going to ask you some very basic questions right now, but because you're not a basic guy, I really want to hear what you have to say. What are your thoughts on fly color with clarity and conditions? I know it's a very cliche question, but I genuinely am curious what you think.
So on fly color, the clarity of water.
Or whether any of just what are your thoughts on color of fly and when you fish what?
Well, I mean, here's another thing too, is that like any rule or any of a idea you have about steelheading sooner or later will be broke. Like if you like, oh, this will never work. Like I never fish that in a dark day, use this color fly, that'll never work. You say never or always, those are always they get broken every time with steelhead fishing. So I don't really have I mean, there's always the rule of thumb, the dark day, dark fly, bright day, bright fly. I mean, that seems to work pretty good. I mean, but I've broken every one of those. So, I mean, clarity of water, typically on the Deschutes, we fish very clear water. We don't have much off color water unless we have a tributary that puts it out, which is called White River that comes off of Mount Hood. Um, so I mean, we're fishing those little wet flies, and then in midday we might fish a sink tip with a little leech or something. The winter's where you run into more of that clarity, and cold. I think it's more water temperature sometimes than really clarity or depth of where the clarity. You got 2, 3 foot viz or 6 foot viz, kind of thing. I think it's more water temperature oriented sometimes, and it's always hard to correlate. And I'm not, I learned a long time ago not to overanalyze anything about steelhead fishing
Yeah.
because you overthink it and you'll just ruin your life overthinking this.
Speaking of
So,
overthinking, what about water rising versus water falling?
right. Well, that's always a good one too. I do not like water rising. I've caught steelhead doing that, but I don't think they're happy at all. They don't know where to be. I think they're just lost out there if the river's really rising. I've caught fish doing it because we just ended up out there like, whoa, the river's really coming up. And you're like, well, let's just stick with it. And you're like, oh, there's one. And you're like, well, what do you know? I think they feel happier. They're in their happy place when it's dropping, things are settling. They kind of find their little happy spot wherever that is in the run. Dropping river definitely better than a rising river for sure.
I
But
agree.
like I said, the Deschutes, it's a dam controlled river, so it's pretty much the same all the time. Other than
Oh
late
yeah.
October or something. So we don't have to deal with any of that. What we have to deal with on the Deschutes, and a lot of our rivers flow north, so we have to deal with the sun angle. That's a huge one
Yes,
for
I've
us.
heard about this. Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that one's weird compared to a lot of people that like the Sandy flows north, the Deschutes flows north. A lot of our rivers flow north, so a certain time of day, that sun's right in their eyeballs. So that's more important than anything is trying to figure out where the canyon, maybe where you can be to get the better sun angle, left, right, behind them, not in their eyes. That's even trout fishing's not very good if it's right in their eyes.
Yeah. Could
So,
you fish? I've never asked this before. This might sound really stupid. Could you
nah.
fish under them so their eyes are looking down? Do fish ever go
I don't think
down
steelhead
to
look
take a fly?
down.
I don't
No,
think
no,
they
no.
do.
I don't think steelhead look this way or trout, they're not always going. I mean, they might go down for something and come, but I don't think they do. I think they're always looking upward, right? Like how many trout have you ever seen go down to grab something other than a lake? That's the only time I've ever seen that, maybe in a weed bed, but not in a river situation.
I've
So
never
no,
seen it
it's
with a
more,
steelhead.
that's why I like the Deschutes for us is it's early in the morning and late in the evening. That's what we're really keying in on our fishery is we're getting out super early in the morning and
Yeah.
trying to fish till lunchtime if we can. And then you take a big break and then we'll fish, from 4:35 on, once the angles get better. But that's pretty unique, I know, for our fisheries, that we have that kind of issue of the sun. That's more of
Yeah.
a thing here.
I've spoke with Amy about it quite a bit, and she's of the same thought
Yeah,
process.
yeah, no, no, no. Anybody that guides on a lot of our rivers, the Deschutes or the Sandy, any of those Oregon rivers that are flowing north into the Columbia, they, even in the winter, the same thing happens, or the spring. You get bright bluebird sunny day. There'll be some runs where the sun comes up super early and it's just boom right in their eyeballs. And you're just
Yeah,
like, that sucks.
we're
You
having
know,
a nap.
didn't clear water and you're like, the sun's right in their eyes. I'm like, we're out of here. Let's go somewhere else.
What about
So,
the swing versus the strip? You know, it's always something that's interesting to me that I personally went from being a salmon angler into steelhead fishing, and I would always go from fishing coho, excuse me, silvers
yeah,
to steelhead, just the way that the season works in British
yeah.
Columbia. And so I would go from stripping my fly to swinging my fly. And I've always wondered, is it just that we've popularized swinging? I mean, I've caught steelhead on the strip. Is it that we're lazy? Is it, why do you think we don't strip, but we do for coho?
Well, here's a
Water?
good example. Like, I do some trout spay. So two-handed fly rods, even for trout. And so I'll show people how to trout spay and, use a streamer on the Deschutes. Since on the Deschutes, we can't fish from a boat. It's hard to fish a streamer really. And so we'll use a trout spay to do that. And these are 2, 3 weight type, rods that we can cast out a ways and swing but we'll twitch, or strip or, activate the fly. And it's funny how many steelhead will hook doing that. You're like, maybe we're doing it wrong. Like, what I like about swinging for steelhead is that kind of that just zoning out, right? Like, you're on a steelhead run, you're in the early morning looking at the canyon. Like, I like that zone out of just like, you're in the zone. Put the cast out, mend it. Like, what do you need to do? You're like, it's swinging. Like, all right, I'm going to start looking around and like, I just forget about everything. I think that's why that most steelheaders are not going to strip their fly because it's just that you just get in that no thought zone of steelheading that like I love it. Like, you're not thinking about anything. You're just like enjoying that moment. And if you had to strip or do stuff, that's like too much.
I wonder this all the time. Is that what it is? Because that sort of mindset and that chill vibe is so specific in many ways to steelhead. When we're
Right,
trout fishing down here, it's not like that. And
right,
even Atlantic salmon fishing, there's a bit of it, but you're still a little more connected and really focused on every inch that that fly's moving. And
right,
I have wondered, is it because half the guys are stoners and they don't want to move their bodies? But
right.
yeah, I wonder sometimes how would the fishing be if we were a little more active? Admittedly, because I'm not a stoner,
Not either. I just like that not
the
thinking of
chill.
anything. You know what I mean? Just being in that place in your mind where you're just like kind of just a happy place, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
really stressed about anything. You're not really, I mean, you might be trying to solve the world problems, when you got other people with you. But if you're by yourself, I'm just thinking, man, this is cool canyon, flies swinging, like just a happy place, I guess. So,
I've done the
and
stripping and all of that coming back. And I can't say I caught any more fish doing it, to be totally honest.
right. And I mean, I've done it with the trout spay where we've caught a few, but I don't know if it's any better. I mean, I, I just like that swing, just not doing anything, just let it rip, let it do its thing. And I think that would change things if you had to strip more, be more activated fishing. I don't know. I don't think I'd like it. I mean, it's like guys chugging a skater. They're twitching a skater, and I'm like, if I'm gonna fish a skater, I just want to watch it skate. I don't want to be twitching it
Moving
around
it.
so much. I'm like, that seems dumb, but it works really well on like the Umpqua or other rivers, and I know it works on the Deschutes, but sometimes I do it to try to figure out where it is. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
there it
I
is.
can't see it.
Right, and then I'm gonna let it go again. I'm not gonna keep twitching it. So
Yeah.
it's just too much work, maybe I'm being lazy. I don't know.
Maybe that's all part and parcel with steelhead fishing. So
Right?
you're not lazy though in general. So what is next? We'll start to wrap it up. What is next for you? You're only 58.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Keep guiding. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. Like I said, you said I'm on this plane where I'm just kind of doing the same thing. I'm just gonna keep doing that. I mean, I've had some opportunities to do some cool stuff, like, like not only guiding, but working with like Winston Rods, or Scientific Angler or some of these companies and do some kind of fun stuff that, I never thought I'd be able to do. So that's kind of the next step, I guess, is doing some projects with some of these companies. But it's something I always do anyway. So, I mean, I feel like I'm out there testing stuff anyway.
I hear you
So,
guys have done some cool new Winston stuff.
yeah, we're working on some new ones right now. I mean, they should be done pretty soon, but that's really fun. I mean, just think of going from the beginning ideas and going all the way through. I've done that before where you got a prototype, right? I'm sure you had some. And then you're like, well, okay, this is what I think. And then it just goes off. You never know what happens after that. It's fun to be like from the beginning, ideas on putting on paper what rods we want, and then watching it go all the way to the end, being part of that. That's it's super fun to do. So I've really enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I could
So.
see you being good at that too. And I don't know if the feedback gets back to you, but the feedback, sorry, Winston, I'm throwing you guys under the bus. The feedback I've heard from them about you and those rods is fantastic. So just know that it's making difference. It's making a difference.
Well, I mean, if you're going to be involved with a rod company and well, here's a good example. Like with Loomis at one time had the grain weight. We were all going to grain weights, right, on these two-handed rods. And which I was like, oh, that'd be cool because it's much easier for people to understand that than like a seven weight, right? Because a seven weight could be a lot of different things in this two-handed world. And so Loomis went to these huge grain windows, right? And I was like, Winston thought about doing this years ago when I started with him. I'm like, no, we don't want to be, I want to get this rod to where the grain windows are like this. Like this is what this rod should throw. This makes it easier for a fly shop to sell this rod to the customer, to the line company, whatever. Because I'm sure you had people show up with I did where showed up with rods that had the wrong line. You're like, man, that line doesn't seem right. Like,
Wrong
how
line
do
and
I tell this
backwards. Oh yeah.
person, right? How do I tell this person they just bought something that a shop sold them that's not that great, like it needs this, and I think that needs to start with the company itself. And how do I help them do that? That's the way I look at it. So I've tried to do that a lot with other companies. So with Winston, that's what I did is try to make like it throws like a seven-way throws a 510 Skagit. Boom, done. And like if you want to go a little heavier, great. But not have it where it's too big. And I think that helps the customer. When I have clients buy it, they go, should I throw this on it? And they're like, yep, that's what that throws. So.
Yeah, all of that gets really tricky. We actually, just as a side note, did an Into the Backing episode where we debated fly lines and how they're like the standard ratings of them. It's
Yeah.
such an interesting topic. So much of it is based on history and then obviously mathematics and then industry and specs. It's a very fly lines and their weights are a very interesting topic.
Right. And with two-handed fly rods, it's a whole nother
Oh, just a different
spectrum.
level. Yes.
Right. It's a whole nother level you don't even want to get into.
Nope, that's right. Which we won't. So wrapping it up,
Right.
is there anything that I have missed that you would like to add or to ask me?
No, but I think you're doing a great job with the podcast. I mean, I've listened to quite
Thanks.
a few of them. I think like compared to a lot of them, you let people talk a little more than maybe some of the others. So I like that a lot,
Oh,
or
good.
sometimes. Well, and I've done some of these where people didn't know anything about steelheading,
Yeah,
which is
that those get tricky too. Yeah.
that gets hard when I start talking and they're like already lost and I'm like I have to keep everything basic, like really basic. So I appreciate that you have knowledge of fly fishing compared to some of the others.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I'd love to fish with you one day. Do you ever get to BC?
I have a couple times. I've been to Skeena Bay and
Okay.
did that with some clients of mine. Me and Marty got to go with some of our clients. They
God, he's a fishy
took us
guy.
up
He is
there.
such a fishy,
So,
fishy, fishy angler.
he's okay. No, we,
He's
we
so
grew up
good.
together, so I mean, we've known each other since we were kids. So I
Yeah,
can say,
right.
yeah, I can say that about him.
Well, if you guys get to BC again, let me know. I know that the shepherds sometimes get out that way.
Yeah, yeah, no, sometimes they do. Yeah, no, I would let you know for sure. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of
Or if you ever
Washington?
got to Oregon.
I do get to Oregon. I will.
Yeah.
I'll definitely let you know. I didn't know that you were. That's embarrassing. I didn't know that you lived that close to Welch's.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I actually live out by Maupin now. So, I mean,
Oh, okay.
I moved out here like 23, 24 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, I have a little ranch outside of Maupin.
Do you
So,
miss the forest?
well, I spend all winter on the Sandies. So, I mean,
So what do you
there's
do
my
when
chance to get back to the rain.
when you're guiding between places? Do you have a place that you rent out there? What do you do?
This always, I tell them this is a life goal as a fishing guide. Here we go. So I live in my parents' basement at 58, guiding on the Sandies. So life goals.
Lucky you.
So I stay at my parents' house.
How
Yeah.
lucky are you to be able to do
Oh no,
that?
it's great. My parents love it. I mean, they're getting up in age, so it's really great
Yeah.
to spend time with them and enjoy what I have left with my parents. So
I would say that is a life goal. We almost
yeah.
lost my dad a few weeks ago. Well, what are we in
Yeah,
August?
well,
He had his final surgery July 11th. He had the big surgery, which was a
oh
success, knock
wow.
on wood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, what a blessing. I
Yeah,
think
no,
that
no,
is a life
exactly. So
goal.
I spend time over there with them and then guide and then come back home and then stay here. So
Cool. And then how many
yeah.
months are you there? If someone wants, oh yeah, if somebody wants to book you, how can they do that?
So I have a website, so it'd be sylviesflyfishing.com and you pretty much put in Brian Silvey, you'll find me somehow.
And then what's the season if they want to book you for
I mean,
that
I guide
region?
year round. So on the Sandies, basically December through April.
Okay.
And then the Deschutes, we'll do trout from like April to August. And then steelheading's like mid-August for me all the way to November. So,
Wow. Then the fact that you're able to manage a year-long schedule is really a
right. And
testament as
that's the
well.
special thing we have here, because we have a year-round fishery and we don't get weather like you would in BC. So
Yeah.
we can do that winter fishery pretty well. And uh, and then do the summer trout and then summer steelhead into the fall. So
Yeah. Well, I'll link all that up. It's been such a pleasure to have you here. It really is the weirdest. Oh, we have met in person. What am I talking about? We met a long time
yeah,
ago,
we met.
but
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
not
yeah.
like I've not like hugged around the campfire with you. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
And I've had all these questions, and embarrassingly, the reason why it's taken me so long to get you on the show is because you're one of those people who's close enough where in my head it's always like, I'll get him when I see him. I want to see him in person. I'll invite him to the
Right.
cabin. And then it just hasn't happened. So at some point I was like, I've just got to pull the band-aid and just
Right. Well, I'm always
do
guiding,
it.
just working.
Yeah.
I
So
never
I'm
go
thankful you
anywhere. I
made it
mean,
work.
like I said, that's my happy place. So I'm always working. So I like guiding. So,
Well, it
you
sounds
know,
like you've got it figured out. It's a good gig. And you look good. You look very healthy and fit and happy.
yeah, other than this.
Well, those are just marks of pride.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it was great to see you. I'll let you get back to your night. Please don't be a stranger. I will link everything up, and I hope people take you up and that they do book you.
Yeah, no. Well, thanks for having me. That was
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.